Okay, I want to go over real quickly how to do a blind hem on a standard sewing machine, and what I'm going to use. This is real fabric that I've used for draperies, so this is going to be the bottom hem on a drapery panel, and we'll go through doing the fold and the pinning and then some of the tips on the sewing machine on how to get a better hem. So first off, those of you that don't know how to do the fold on the blind hem, let me go through that very quickly. I know it can be kind of confusing if you've never done one before. So this is my hem at the bottom of my, let's say, my drapery panel. So there it is coming up. This is the back side, that's the front side. So all you do is you're trying to create a ridge here to sew on. That's part of the hem line, and that's going to end up being this back edge right here of the hem line. So the way you do that is you take it and you fold it up and over like that. And I'm going to exaggerate, exposing the hem line, but basically that's what you're doing. And the sewing machine is going to take stitches here and then take a stitch there, stitch over here, and then come over there all the way down. So it's about every third or fourth stitch, it's taking just a little bitty piece of the fold area right here. And if you use the same color thread, the net result is when you unfold it, those stitches shouldn't hardly be seen at all, especially if the thread matches. So that's how you do the fold, and you would get it lined up where you need it to be, somewhere around there. That's your area right there that you're going to sew on. This is where it's going to take the little stitch. Do it evenly all the way down. That'll give you a good straight hem. So as you can see, I've done that here, and I've pinned, and you want to pin generously, especially this is a stretchy weave, and you can get away with fewer pins on something that doesn't stretch as much, but if you get something like this, you see how I've stuck my pins in this way. That gives me optimal coverage on my pins, and I do that all the way down. The key is the way I'm pinning here. It allows me to leave my pins in as I do my stitch, so it keeps everything in place. This is a good time to use pins. One difference is right here on this edge, I want to keep that perfectly lined up, because we're going to come down and do what's called a ladder stitch to hold that end together by hand. I'm not going to go through how to do that, but I pin it that way to keep that perfectly aligned when I start out, and I do it on the other end too. Now we've got scrap on the other end that's been cut out and stuff, so, but mainly I'm going to go through some tips on how to get the best hem. So let's move over to the sewing machine, and I'll show you some tips regarding what thread to use on it, and we'll get started from there. Okay, let's go through real quickly how the blind foot works on your standard sewing machine. If you look on the bottom here, there's a little groove right there, and there's a screw that allows you to move the little guide there from the right to the left. And what your sewing machine does is the needle goes down. Get a needle here. It takes a few stitches on this side of the fabric right here, the part that's not seen. So it goes down this way, and then it goes over and takes a bite of this side of the fabric, trying to get as little as possible. Then it goes 1, 2, 3, and then it does a stitch here, back over 1, 2, 3, and then a stitch here again. And the trick here is to try to get your machine set up to where it takes about that much. And you can see I'm just basically picking a little hole right there. But anyway, you want to get just a thread or two if possible, and that will give you the best blind hem. You don't want it coming way over here. The further over it goes, the stitch size doubles once you unfold this. So again, you want to try to keep it as close as possible. So adjust this foot, and what I do is you can take the thread out of the needle, and you can turn it and see where it's going over, and just adjust the foot until it just barely catches just a little bit of that fabric. So we put the foot on here, and we'll get started. reposition the camera and we'll get started. Okay, now we're at the sewing machine and we've got our foot installed. So we've got our thread pulled back, and I'm going to put the guide right here along this edge as I start. And what you want to do is you want to go ahead and rotate the hand wheel, and what I do is I take the top thread out and I sew a few test stitches, and I stop to see that needle is just barely catching just a little tiny bit of that fabric, as little as possible, while keeping it hemmed. So you want to play around with it, and you can set your width, you can change your width, you can change the position on the foot. Between those two combinations you can get it just right. That's what we're trying to do. So we're going to start sewing here, and I'll show you the results. Got to keep everything lined up with these panels because they're so long. This one's about 118 inches long. So we're dealing with a lot of fabric. And what I do is I keep this hand to keep everything straight, to keep the grain straight, and with this one I'm just trying to keep this flattened and up against that guide nicely. So between the two of them, you can guide your fabric through. Go a little ways and readjust everything. Oh, and the other thing you can do on your machine is set the stitch length at the longest length, and that'll allow it to move further and then take fewer bites off the hem side, and that helps it also, makes it look really nice. And we're just about at the hem. I told you this got kind of cut up. That was a mitered corner that I pulled out of it to do this. So. And we are done. Alright, let me get the pins out and I'll line everything back up and I'll show you the results. Okay, an important thing I forgot to mention. When you do these Blindhems, use a serger thread. The serger thread is much smaller than what a standard thread is, like a Coates and Clark Dual Duty or something along those lines. Anyway, that's one of the things that helps the stitch stay that much more invisible. And this is actually a gray thread that I use for a lot of things. And the reason I like gray is it blends in. Now it happens to blend in really well with this color. It's almost the same color. But anyway, get a very light gray, a medium gray, and a dark gray, and you'll be able to use those on a lot of different things. But I use the Superior stands for all my threads, and I highly recommend them. But if you need to, you can get one from Joann or something, like one of the plastic ones. But I really like these. They're more expensive, but I can put any spool type on here and it feeds very nicely. So use this, and use like a size 10 general needle, and you will be in good shape. The thread's thinner, so the smaller eye, you can even use a size 9 needle if you can find one. So smallest needle possible, smallest thread possible, and you'll get good results. So let me show you the results here. This is the hem side, so we were sewing down through here, and so you see the little kind of zigzag stitch there. We have a few on here, and then it goes over and takes a bite out of it, and so you see it tacks it down. Let me turn it over, let you see the hem side, and that's the stitch line. And as you can see, by using a little bit looser thread, a smaller thread. Loosen your tension 1 or 2 under what your machine says is the normal, and you'll get a little bit less tension because the thread is thinner also. So go ahead and use a lighter tension, and these loops won't be so tight, and that allows the thread to relax. And so what you end up with is a hemline that is virtually invisible. And I have to get really close to see any of the stitches in this, and I've got magnifying glasses on, and I mean, I can see one there, I think there's one there, but anyway, if you get away from it at arm's distance, you don't even notice it. So anyway, serger thread, smallest needle possible. Take the smallest bite out of the fabric possible when you're doing your stitch, and take the thread out of the needle and watch it and make sure it stays nice and flat, and it just barely catches the edge when it comes over. And if you do those things, you can get away with using a sewing machine all day long to do blind stitches. I've got a dedicated blind stitch machine that I use for drapes, but I wouldn't hesitate in a minute to use this on some if I had to. So if that's all you got, use what you've got. Just get the proper technique, the proper tools, and you'll get great results. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help you out. Otherwise, take care.